Hello. Yeah, good
Hello,
evening.
all.
So Rachel's going to be here. I don't know about Tom. I didn't hear from him.
How you doing, John? How you doing, Zach?
Okay.
Good.
There's one person on a phone call, looks like a New Paltz number. I'm not sure if this is a member of the board or a guest. I'll admit them now.
Okay. Hi, we just got a phone symbol there. May I ask who this is?
Yeah, hi, this is Tom Tango from Woodland Pond.
Oh, very good. Okay.
There's Tom Peterson.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Tom.
Hello, Tom.
Haven't seen Rachel yet. She usually is in late. So let me just send her a note. All right, I sent Rachel a text and we'll see what happens. Okay, she just responded that she's working to get in. All right, let's just go ahead and get started then. So it is 7 o'clock. Are we recording now? Autumn?
We are recording.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the February 15th, 2022 meeting of the Village of New Paltz Planning Board. We are on Zoom, and if you wish to attend, there has been a notice that was sent out, and we are ready to go. So we've got quite a few things to do tonight. We have some administrative business. We do not have any public hearings. We do have public comments. We didn't have any public hearings, but we do have some application reviews, which are going to take up a great deal of time and discussion. So with that, let's get started here. Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes from February 1st, 2022?
I did.
Okay. Are there any edits or reviews that we need to make? Any comments that need to make? Any changes that need to be made? No? Okay. Hearing
Okay to
none
me.
then. Okay. So hearing none, then I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes for the February 1st, 2022 meeting of the Village of New Paltz Planning Board.
So motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. So that has then passed. We now are moving on to updates from the Village Board, Ulster County Planning Board, Environmental Planning Board. Is William Murray available? Okay, Rachel's having some difficulty getting in. Let me send her the
Just go to the village and get folks plan.
Bill Murray noted that he would be a little bit late.
Okay. Let's see if we can find you. Hello? Ellen Rocco's here.
Very good. One moment, please. So if
We
everybody
asked-
would please mute their microphone so that we don't have to compete for attention and space here. So I just emailed Rachel. I'll let her know. Okay. So now we are going to move forward to, is Will Murray here? That was the question. I do not see him here.
He said he would be a little late.
Okay, so we're going to move that past that then from the updates. We do have an issue that we need to discuss. It is the ZBA ZB 2201 referral. That's part of our administrative business. Just to quickly read through this, ZB 2201 is a pending ZBA application in which the applicant has appealed the building inspector's issuance of a notice of violation for clearing of an estimated 4,500 square feet of land without site approval. The village code requires the ZBA to refer matters, including appeals which were not previously reviewed by the planning board, to the planning board at least 30 days prior to a public hearing to give the planning board an opportunity to provide an opinion to the ZBA. This type of ZBA appeal is different than an appeal to request variances related to pending or impending planning board applications. In this appeal, the sole issue for the ZBA is whether they would have made the same or different determination as was made by the building inspector. The ZBA essentially stands in the shoes of the building inspector and has the same powers of determination on the issue, determine whether or not the notice of violation ought to have been issued. Thus, there is really no input for the planning board to make. Unlike a typical area variance appeal related to the planning board application, it doesn't involve any need for the skill sets possessed by the planning board to help inform the ZBA as to its deliberations decision. So we can discuss this, but presuming that we really have no comments on this matter, it will simply be relayed to the ZBA so that the ZBA can proceed on March 8th as scheduled. So is there anyone that feels compelled to comment on this with the for the ZBA? More Rachel problems. Autumn, would you be able to reach out to Rachel?
She's in the waiting
There you
room
go.
now. She's
Okay.
being admitted.
Thank you. So with that in mind, what I would like to do is I'd like to get a motion to respond back to the ZBA with no comments from the planning board.
So motion.
A second on that?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So this issue of the notice of violation will be given back to the ZBA. They will go through their normal course of events to make a determination on that.
I think the only thing, Mr. Chairman, that needs to be done is for Autumn to notify the ZBA members of the planning board's determination.
Okay.
Thank
Autumn,
you.
just make sure you place a note there so that we can get that back to the ZBA so that they can then handle the issue as they would through their normal course of action.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So next we are going to move on to public comments. Autumn, is there anyone in the waiting room for a public comment?
Tom Denton just joined and nobody else is in the waiting room at this time.
So do we have anyone here who is wanting to speak in a public comment? No? Okay. We're going to hold the public comments open until the end of the meeting in case there are people that may want to speak to an issue who did not get the chance or would not get the chance in the normal course of the meeting. They'll have that opportunity to at the end of the meeting for any sort of public comments. So as we have no public hearings, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at application reviews. The first one is a site plan and special use permit subdivision, and a subdivision as well. PB 21, 13, and 14. It's 54 South Mannheim, known as Mannheim Muse. The applicant is Mannheim Muse itself. So we have seen this application before, and it's for the approval of a site plan and a subdivision, which is going to be a lot line revision and consolidation involving 3 parcels of land that are going to be cut to 2. One's going to hold the existing residence that's there, and that is in the R2 district, I believe. And then they are going to take the second one to a larger lot. It currently has an office building on it. The intention of the office of the applicant is to demolish the office building and create a new senior citizen residential development, 2.5 stories, 51 unit building, associated driveway, parking lot, landscaping, lighting, etc., all to be constructed. The board classified this as an unlisted action, and a notice of intent to be lead agency was circulated. However, there is an increase in the units, and I want to get an explanation, more professional explanation of how that increase was granted. But the increase in units will elevate this to a type 1 if the property is close to, among other things, public recreation areas. And the New Paltz Central School District, the middle school, has a sports field close by, and we don't know really whether the DEC would say that whether the school-owned sports fields that allow public to enjoy them constitutes a public recreation area. But first, ask our attorney, would you please explain to the rest of the members of the board how they went from the smaller number of units to the larger number of units, please?
Well, there's a provision in your code that allows for affordable senior housing to be able to get a bump up in density. It's not unusual for codes to do things along this line. So that as a result, they have taken advantage of that and have decided to recast this and increase their units. So as far as we can tell, we haven't gotten a zoning review from Corey, but from our review in my office, we believe that that's probably correct. The increase in the numbers, that they have a right to ask for that, given their present application.
Okay. So what we'll have to do is look at typing this as a type 1. Of course, the issue comes down to whether that is going to require a full environmental impact statement review, but we can look at the FEAF Part 2 and determine otherwise, and then that would lead us to take this type 1 action and then allow the seeker review to progress as an expanded EAF Part 3, which would allow the applicant to address any sort of environmental issues, concerns that the planning board has. We can do that by our consultants, which we've hired before to look at things, including traffic, endangered species, archaeology, other things as well, as we've done in a couple of instances. And then those will be reviewed by our consultants and the board. And if the studies do not adequately address the planning board's concern, we can go back and ask for a full EIS review at a later date. The referrals, though, and I'll ask our attorney for some help here, they're a little bit tricky. We have, it's required for the site plan and special use permit application. But the subdivision application is exempt from referral under the agreement with Ulster County Planning Board. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's a practical matter. You would just, there's no sense in splitting up the plans, for instance. So we would just send it all on. Technically, the subdivision is exempt from referral, but it's an integral part of the site plan as well. So there's no sense in trying to literally split hairs on this. And so we would just, I think you should move to go ahead and refer it. With respect to seeker, I think you should move to assume lead agency since we have not received any objections thereto. And that you should retype the action as a type 1. The only immediate consequence of that is that the applicant then needs to submit a full EAF Part 1.
Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do then is we're going to make a motion to refer this to the Ulster County Planning Board.
So
So
motion.
Second, please.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So,
Autumn, are you familiar with how to send this on to the Ulster County Planning Board?
exactly.
I've read the notes.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. If you need any help, just reach out.
Thank you, will do.
So it has now been referred to the Ulster County Planning Board, and we have not received any objections from any of the other involved agencies. So I want to get a motion to declare the Village of New Paltz Planning Board as the lead agency.
So motion.
The second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the last thing that we need to look at is to typing this as a type 1 action now, as opposed to the unlisted, which it was earlier. So need a motion to type this under seeker as a type 1 action.
So motion.
The second, please.
Second.
Okay. So we're going to then,
Need a vote.
I'm sorry.
We need a
All in
vote.
favor, I'm sorry. My apologies. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
My apologies. I got a little ahead of myself. So we
That's
have
right.
not classified this as a type 1 action.
And the applicant will have to now submit a full environmental assessment form.
Exactly. So that was what we're going to request from our applicants to get started on the full environmental assessment form. That will come back. We'll have our attorney look at that, and we'll formulate a response after we look at it and move forward. So with that bit of action, I would like to get the applicant to give us a little bit of an idea of what they're doing, how it has changed. We're also going to have to ask you for the special use permit narrative, so that we can kind of move forward on this. So who do we have representing the Manheim Muse tonight? Andy, I see you're there.
Yep, Andy Willingham here, Keith Leibold,
Hey, Keith, how are you guys?
and is AJ here, Keith?
He should be. I was
Should-
expecting him on.
Yeah, the architect.
I can speak to the layout if he misses as we present. That's fine.
All right, so as you said, we were here back in, I think, October, and we were here at 31 unit 2-story building, and further review of the code, we realized that the units, 100% of the units qualify as affordable under the village code. So we're allowed the additional units. So we kind of switched gears and went back to the design table as far as the building. And it's now a 2.5-story building with 51 units. And I'll let Keith and the architect talk about that, but it's basically the same site plan. It only got, the building got 10 feet longer. And
But you also now are at, what did you call it, 2.5 stories? And Corey has not weighed in yet as to whether that is a 2.5-story building or a 3-story building, which would require you, given the height, to go for a variance. So
correct.
to address that too.
there's been some conversations about that, and I think we feel comfortable that it meets that 2.5-story definition per the code, but yeah, Corey does officially have to determine that. So we know we have some homework to do. As far as the special use permit and the EAF and a lot of the stuff we talked about last time, but since this was a pretty big change, we wanted to come back to the board and at least give you a look at this new building with the additional density, and then we'll proceed with all the detailed information that you'll need to do the full site plan review and seeker and all that.
Okay.
So with that, can I turn over to you, Keith? And I didn't go, but Keith and AJ went to the HPC last night.
Right.
And presented a couple different options as far as the building goes. Keith, do you want to kind of describe that?
Well, first, before you do that, did the other board members, did you receive the notice from the Historic Preservation Committee? They did send an email out today.
The one that came today, I haven't seen yet. I saw the previous one. Also, I am not getting access to the projects on the agenda. I requested access, but I haven't received it yet. So if you could put the project up on the screen, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Rachel, it's possible that you have to click the link in the agenda document, the Google document. I was having issues
Okay.
clicking.
I tried that, and I also even went on the website and nothing worked. I'll try that
Okay.
again.
All right, I'm gonna share the renderings. I apologize. We meant to send these to you a little bit ahead of time. You are just seeing these for the first time. You did get the elevation drawings, but not the renderings.
What concerns me are the adjacent wetlands and then the restored wetland that's behind it. On that borders Joe Allen, that was supposed to be restored by the development next to you.
Okay.
Wow.
So Andy, you're screen sharing right now?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So just by brief narrative, we have done, when we went to the increase in density and added the 18 beds and moving to a 2.5-story design, you wind up with this architectural condition of a mansard roof in order to stay compliant. We have done probably close to 12 renderings. We boiled that down to roughly 3. And to that prior statement, went back to HPC to get their input as the elements changed. We, over 45 minutes, went between this one. For your edification and understanding, this was not the architectural features that were selected to present as a path forward jointly with the HPC, but rather this is a completely compliant height option. Its architectural elements on the next rendering were found to be more attractive. And in order to achieve those elements, it'd be about 4.5 feet over. And that's what would generate the need to get a variance. In order to mimic the slate next door in the science building at SUNY, we tried to draw from that architecture. We tried to draw from Seakills. On this rendering, the siding should have been represented as vertical to match that, but it's shown here horizontal. If you can take your cursor, Andy, and just circle in between the 2 windows, there's a small bit of dormer that protrudes out, or I'm sorry, mansard roof on the bump out of the building right above the tree. We would like to, at a later date, render that and remove it. The HPC said that may be an architectural element they'd like to see. I believe, Zach, you wanted to see some additional tree screening in the front entry. it is difficult for me to get the rendering to show the way the approach to this building would be in reality because the contour from the road is in a valley. We did add some additional trees on the right-hand side, which screens the back half of the building roughly. It's not very impactful on the rendering because I can't drop this picture's perspective down in the computer program. But I attempted to address that point. So that's how we got to this juncture. It's our desire, if the board agrees, to move forward with this rendering and seek a variance for the architectural features if you guys agree that this is the preferred look of the building.
I'm not sure, but I would, if you don't mind, if you could give me an explanation of how it qualifies as affordable housing, by how much and how it qualifies.
So it's 100% affordable housing. It qualifies through a state agency, HCR. The entire project would be governed and overseen through that agency. It's awarded its funding through the agency as an application and has to go through a rigorous scoring in order to be selected. It's through that state mechanism which would qualify that. It isn't necessarily my labeling of this building that makes it in any way affordable housing. It's tied
Is
to
it subsidized? I don't understand how that works. Is it subsidized somehow, or how much would it cost for an apartment?
So the apartment, all of this is worked hand in hand via a pilot in order to establish the rent rolls. It requires a pilot in order to show that it can hit the affordability and what rent affordability is. By adding the additional units, we were also able to get a little bit more aggressive, offer a couple very low income units. It also helps stabilize the project as far as reserve accounts, maintenance, a full staffed on-site super. The project will be able to now actually reach fiscal stability, where before it was at the absolute bare minimum. 31 units in this model of development is the absolute minimum. So we were very happy to be able to do that and provide this with more stability. It was definitely a win.
So how much would an apartment cost?
So an apartment would range. I'm regretting that my father's not present, as he usually handles the financial build out. I would say a 1-bedroom would probably be around, depending on the qualified candidate, between around $500 to $600. The building would be and include solar, preheated electric, hot water, very minimal utility burden. And all of that scores through the HCR application. So all of those things are going to be represented in this project. It'll be LEEDs, energy efficient, all Energy Star is a baseline. So it's very much so. This project is going to encompass everything the governor wants to see about full electrification on a project and reaching forward with energy, and it's absolutely going to score well.
So you're saying that a 1-bedroom apartment would cost the tenant between $500 and $600 a month, and then there would be just minimal utility up above that. So is it actually that the rent is subsidized above that, or is this the actual cost of the unit for the renter?
That's
Or
the
do
actual.
they have to
for
get
the-
some?
No, for the tenant, that's their rent. So that they don't have to seek any other forms of assistance to pay that rent. And certain homeowner, that's right. So other units may be even lower than that, which would category as very low. And again, they would qualify, meaning a senior who may be choosing to work full-time in a career path, who's continuing to make a six-figure income, would not be allowed to live in an affordable senior housing because they make too much money. So this is all programmed specifically in a window, ma'am, if you will, of what you qualify for.
I'd really like to learn more about it, how it works. Because I'm guessing there's some agency of the government that determines all this. It's just a field I just don't know much about.
No, this is all very good questions. There is. And so HCR, Housing and Community Renewal.
And what is HCR?
It's a state agency that provides tax credits for projects like this. They also provide funding for projects such as certain advocates do affordable housing specifically for mobility impaired or workforce housing or artistry housing. And so candidates, developers, people who, such as myself, would take a project and put together the mission statement, if you will, of this project. Things that and they have a scoring category of, like, you know, are you including things the state is trying to do, such as electrification? Do you score how they have items for, especially for seniors? How close are you to resources within a walkable distance? How close are you to bus stops? How close are you to pharmacies? This property scores extremely well for that. We're within walking distance of Diedrich's in our community. We're very close to a lot of other items that HCR would look at this project favorably on, and it is zoned for this. And so that all of that gets packaged together and submitted to the state for review.
I'm a little bit concerned, not concerned, I'm a little bit confused though. Your density bonus was granted under the local zoning code that you gave, right? That's what you're taking advantage of, right? Under chapter 132.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So
My understanding is that affordable housing requirements are also going to be in accordance with chapter 132 and not just as part of some state program.
right. So that if you want to, it's going to qualify for both. So
Okay, I just want to make sure that you're not presenting this like, well, the state has given its blessing and therefore,
no,
so it has to go through all of the requirements of chapter 132, goes through the villages, affordable housing board. The prices are going to be set in accordance with the village code requirements, et cetera, correct?
correct. So the reason why we got the addition, where we think we get the additional units, is because the village code says that you have to do 10% affordable, and any units beyond that, per the village definition of affordable, you get a 1-to-1 additional units. And because these units are all 100% affordable, that's how we get the density bonus in the village.
Understood. I got confused by talking about only the state program as to affordability, which is fine that you're having that. But for this zoning board's purposes, it will be the requirements for chapter 132 that will have to be complied with, including providing an affordable housing plan and eventually going through the board, having prices set and monitored in accordance with the local board. I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page here.
Absolutely, Mr. Gold. And that's why per our prior visit, I believe we spoke about the budgets all being shared. Absolutely, the performance of the building, it's open book. There would, in transparency to that point, there would have to be a position of intersection of sharing an understanding at the village level that I must also abide by the state's requirements for their program, which to my understanding, when I reviewed, far exceed our local requirements. So I don't think they would be anywhere in conflict, but yes, to your point, there would absolutely be
But if
sharing of
they
that.
are in
information.
conflict, I don't know how you're going to resolve that conflict, but it's not for this board to resolve it. But
Understood.
for all the planning board members to know how the program is going to work, you don't need to know how the state program is going to work. You can look at chapter 132 of the village code, and it goes through specifically how things, the standards for the housing units, the affordability of them, minimum gross floor area, income eligibility, maximum sales prices, resale prices, if they were going to be sold at some time in the future, lease renewal requirements. So there's quite a bit in chapter 132 that sort of explains the affordable nature and the affordable housing procedure that must be followed here. Your resolution won't go into all of those details of, for instance, setting rents, et cetera, because that's up to the board, the village housing board to set. But you will in your resolution be mandating as a condition that they comply within each and every provision of chapter 132 of the village code. You will have some other things that the affordable housing plan has to be put together and sent to you. You have to approve that, but I think that's a small part of the affordable housing process, most of which is going to be held and processed through this village housing board.
Understood.
I had one more question. So are you going to, what's the age limit going to be? And are you going to require people be a certain age if they move in there?
For seniors, I would have to double check. I don't want to misrepresent. I believe it's 55. I know we stated it at the last meeting that was covered. I don't know if the minutes reflected it. I just don't want to contradict myself.
It's 55 for to be a senior citizen development in the village.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the members of the board?
If I, John, I hate to keep jumping
No,
in.
go right ahead.
But for the planning board members, just like there is a whole chapter dealing with the affordable housing requirements of this, this is also considered to be a senior citizen development. And so there are certain requirements of a senior citizen development that are set forth in the code that they will have to comply with, and you will have to oversee during this approval process.
Now, who, I mean, it might be interesting, it might be worth the time to hear from someone from the Affordable Housing Board, but is there a senior citizens board for the village as well?
No, it's just a zoning criteria, and there's a definition for it in the definitions, and then it's I believe a special permit for the senior citizen development.
And that's the next thing we wanted to discuss is the special use permit.
So that's 212-41- or not dash, but parens K is the senior citizen development special permit. So the planning board members can look at that as well for other criteria. Which Andy is going to be putting together a narrative addressing all those issues.
Exactly. So that's one of the things, and Andy, you can go ahead and release the screen. That's one of the things that we do need to get from you is the special use permit narrative, so that we can look at that in terms of granting the special use permit. And for the board members, I think that it would be quite well worth our time. And we'll make a note, please, if we can get a note in our notes, Autumn, to have the planning board look at chapter 132 affordable housing plan, and then the senior special use permit in 212-41K as part of our homework for the next meeting that we have, so that we can be better informed of it. At that time, we'll have quite a bit of information that's going to be coming back to us as we move forward with this. There's some other items that need to be addressed that were not finished from the last meeting. And then we need to discuss the SWIP under chapter 165 of the Village Code.
John, I'm sorry, could I just make one comment about
Absolutely.
the design? So I personally, I think that the previous design that wasn't using the mansard roof looked just better and fit better with the rest of the architecture of the town. I mean, I haven't actually read the HPC's memo on this, but I don't see many other instances of mansard roofs in our historic properties. It seems like if you're already going to be applying for a variance, you could just apply with a similar roof design as the original plan, but maybe maybe I'm wrong about that. I'll definitely look at the HPC, what the HPC said, and follow up with them.
Just to give you a brief, they have the summary points of the recommendation. They talk about recognizing adding affordable senior housing. Proposed lot coverage is already at about the legal limit. Understanding, we accept that a third floor is the only reasonable route to get to 55 units. Maintain the original position that saving as much of the wooded grass, plantable sections of the lot is desirable. Although the mansard style roof design is not one commonly found in the village, they agree with you, Zach. The design does deliver the additional units allowed by code, and it thoughtfully relates to the modern slate-sided SUNY New Paltz Science building across the street, while other design elements such as the windows, porches, raised seam roofing reference more traditional elements in the village, particularly if the gabled apartment complex to the south and other single-family homes in the immediate area. So Tom did send this out. It is just only 2 pages, so you might take a look at that. Zach, did you get a copy of this? Did that come to you?
I did not see that in my email, but I think it's here in the folder. If yeah,
it is, but I'm
Okay.
gonna go ahead and send that to you right now so that you have that.
Oh, maybe this is old actually.
Rachel, Dennis, and Tom. And Tom's sending that to you as well. There we go. So that's
Thanks.
been sent off to you. I'm going to ask our attorney, are there any other outstanding issues that we didn't cover here outside of the SWIP, because we will want to discuss that.
Yes, there's actually quite a number of them. They were raised previously. They're in my memo to the board. I can, to streamline things, cut and paste these and send them on to Andy so that he can see which issues that we're talking about. Some of them are minor, some are not so, but they relate a lot to the plans, and some of that needs to be adjusted in order to be code compliant.
Okay. There are certain things about such as misidentifying one of the parcels and on and on and on. So yeah, if you would cut and paste those, get those over to Andy. Everyone, as part of the notes that were sent out from the agenda, please take a look at those. Just to note that we still have some outstanding issues before we get there. That leads us to the issue of the SWIP. And there was some back and forth in emails that were going on. I know that Andy, you didn't want to see that triggered just yet because you wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to hear all the thoughts of the board before putting together a SWIP plan, and Corey wanted to see a SWIP plan before the board discussed it. So it kind of places us in the center of it. Qualifying for the SWIP, Rick, you want to tell everyone just to make sure they all understand what qualifies or not qualifies for the SWIP, what it concerns?
Well, the SWIP is required because they're disturbing more than an acre of land. The question that arose late today is with respect to the timing of providing that SWIP. As I understand it, Andy is not saying they're not going to be providing a SWIP, but it's just that he wanted to provide a SWIP at a time that the design is more solidified, so that the SWIP does not have to be redone, because when you put together a SWIP, there are lots of drainage calculations that have to take place. And even if you adjust some things, as I understand it, I'm not an engineer, but as you adjust even some small aspects of grading and building placement, et cetera, it can drastically affect drainage calculations and therefore drastically affect the SWIP, so that it may effectively have to be redone. But Corey's issue is, despite that practicality, whether the zoning code by its language requires that the SWIP be upfront. I have not looked at it since I saw those emails, so I can't weigh in. But right now, Corey is saying the code requires it at this time. I'll also look at whether or not this is something that you might have the ability to waive as far as timing. But again, I just don't know until I look at the code.
Okay, so I think it would be valuable to have our village engineer weigh in on this.
Rather than your attorney.
You know, you're great with words, but sometimes your math is lacking. So I think it might be worth the time and effort to have our village engineer weigh in on this. So I'm going to ask, please, Autumn, to put a note in there that we want to have Dennis Larios to notify him, and we'll try to make a call to him tomorrow and see if we can get some advice and data from him that might help form a bit of a compromise that might be helpful to both parties and fulfill the needs of both groups here. So with that in mind, we've pretty much done all that we can do. We've just to go back and kind of summarize, we have done quite a bit, actually. We have typed the action, we have made the referral. We are going to get the information from you as a type 1. We're going to have our engineer, we're going to invite him to take a look at the information, and then you're going to give us a special use narrative at our next meeting, I'm hoping. Anything else that, Andy, that you guys need from us as far as direction, how we're moving on it?
No, I think that, our plan after last meeting was to do the SWIP and to do all the things that you asked and what Rick asked. But then we had a different building, so we didn't want to go too fast on that. But now that is our plan to come next time we come back, is to have it pretty much designed completely with all that information. I guess the only part that would be nice to know, because it's going to take a little bit of time to do all that work, is what direction we're going in on as far as this building height. If we are going with this taller building, then the ZBA is a 3-month process, which would be great to get going. So I'm wondering if there's some way to kind of sift through this building preference while we're doing all that work.
Andy, could you share both designs so that the board can see which one doesn't need to go to the ZBA and which one does? If that at all matters.
All right. Oops. So this is, if everybody can see, this is the code compliant building. And this is the one, as I understand, is preferred by HPC that needs the variance for height.
Okay, which now. All right, so I just sent a note to Corey, telling him that we need to get a determination on 2.5 versus the 3 stories. So the other with the mansard roof is one that you're looking at being a 2.5, and this particular rendering that we're looking at now is the 3. Is that correct?
Actually, I think these would both be considered 2.5
Got
the way that the code's written, but this is too tall. It's a 35. Is it 30 or 35, Keith? 30.
Yes, so this is about 34 and a half, which gave us the room for those architectural peaks over the windows and a slightly steeper mansard. So the other image is code compliant at 30 feet. And then what you have to do though is you have a dormer over the windows instead of that peak. So it's just 2 different looks. Again, in this rendering, it's just an older one. It shows as shingles instead of a slate to match the architectural element across the street at the SUNY New Paltz Science Center. That feature can be represented on either. We're just presenting if one architectural view is more desirable, then that triggers us to go to zoning. One does not. And we're just looking for the community input as to which you'd like.
And So-
Okay, so
I'm not-
Corey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it doesn't appear that, unless there's some other difference, that the difference between the 2 renderings will have any impact on the SWIP.
Correct. Neither rendering will have the impact of the building footprint as it sits now.
Okay.
Or the
No,
SWIP.
it's not a SWIP issue. It's more of a matter of I need time to really to do all that work, and I probably won't be back for a month, and it would be good to kind of keep moving forward on this building and not have to wait a month to come back and discuss this again.
Well, if Corey's already decided that the previous one is 2.5, and you know that this one is slightly over the limit for 2.5, and you would need a variance, then, I mean, to me, the decision comes down to, do you want to go for the variance or not in order to comply with the HPC? Or do you want to work with them to see if you can perhaps create something that would not go into the area where you need variance, but still comply with what the HPC said?
So Keith, is your feeling that you want to pursue this? The taller building?
The taller building has benefits for screening of the solar arrays that will want to be seen by the state for obviously its energy scoring, as well as screening for any condensers. So there's added bonus, if you will, to that.
Well, then it seems like the decision is that you're going to need to go before the ZBA.
If we did, it's. So we're in a bit of the, okay, so if I might ask, and Mr. Golden, I'm gonna need help with this because I know this is a bit of an oddity. If we need to go down that track, it would be very beneficial if we could move in parallel and open for public comment and leave that open through the process on this track. So would we be willing to then open for public comment for seeker and leave that open, obviously, because we haven't heard back from county, we haven't applied to county, but we could leave that open till we hear back, while I then in parallel go to zoning for for an architectural variance for the 4.5 feet. I'm trying to just work in parallel and still attempt to work through the process and as efficiently as I can.
I don't think there's any way to really avoid 2 public hearings. You have to have a state required public hearing for the subdivision. And you have to have a state required public hearing for the variance. Seeker has to be done before we have a public hearing on the subdivision. So, I mean, it's just the way that the state law requires. So we'll have to have seeker completed, which means we need the FEIF Part 1. We then will prepare an FEIF Part 2. The board then needs to go through that analysis and determine whether or not there are any significant adverse environmental impacts, and if so, whether you can mitigate those through some studies and expert submissions so we don't go through an EIS. But all that has to be done before our public hearing. Likewise, the ZBA, which will have its own public hearing, they can start deliberating, but they can't make a decision until seeker is done.
Correct. So I missed the subdivision. I was hoping to move in parallel. But that seems like that is unavoidable. It's not attainable.
Yeah,
I
I
have a-
think so.
If you say that the higher roof, that is shielding the solar panels, I would like to see then what they look like. I mean, because you can't see them on the other rendition. So if one of the options somehow screens them, I'd like to see how I would see them on the option that doesn't screen them. And the only other question I had was about energy efficiency and window size. Because I think it's important to have, I don't know, I like big windows, but I don't necessarily know whether the roof decorations, they're not gonna look real anyhow. I mean, I don't know how much function they serve. But if they are screening something, I'd like to see what it looks like without the screening to see what difference there is.
So then I think right now what we would need to do, I would say we would like to go pursue the variance.
Okay.
And do you refer me to zoning or do I just apply? I didn't
No,
know.
we'll have to make a motion to refer you to zoning.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might though, I mean, HPC is weighed in, but it's
Yes,
still your decision as the planning board as to which style you want. So I'm not sure that it makes sense to refer it if the sense of the planning board is that you really don't want that design over the other design.
I thought that was the decision of the applicant, and we were supposed to weigh in on whether we agree with it or not. So then you're saying that we need to make the decision on which of the two the applicant is to use.
Well, you have the ability to go ahead and say, this is the look that we want. That's part of your aesthetics, is part of what your role is in the planning board. The decision now with at least just 2 renderings posed, or 2 choices posed, is one requires a variance and the other doesn't. I just didn't want you sort of to defer it to the applicant and or the HPC. You obviously need to take into great account their expertise in this, but it's just, there needs to be, I didn't want a decision made by default, in other words. So I didn't want you to say, go to that, and then by default, then you're saying that's the one you want, even if it's not. So I just wanted an affirmative discussion by the board to say, well, that's the one we want, go get a variance.
Well, and here's what I'm going to suggest is, Andy, if you can get us those renderings of both of those styles. I just sent out the HPC memo. What I'd like to do is to have some time devoted at our next meeting to come to a bit of clarity about which one we believe would work best, or that we feel that would be best for the village, and which would be in harmony with the rest of the building in the area. And then once we've done that, then we can make our recommendation, and then if necessary, we can send it over to the ZBA.
Okay, that works. And I'm not gonna have all that stuff done for that meeting, so don't yell at me when my homework's not done at that meeting, please. It'll be just about architecture for that, if that's okay.
All right, that sounds fine. Okay, so now that we're clear on that, that's how we're going to proceed, unless anybody else has an objection to it and an idea of a different way to proceed on it. No? Okay. All right, so we're going to then wait for you. We've got quite a bit done, and we're going to wait for you to get us the architectural drawings, the renderings. You've got the HBC information that board members, it's in your box, and then like for you to raise some questions so that we can look at this next at our next meeting in March. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, that leads us next to the site plan, special use permit, and subdivision application for PB 2201, 100 Woodland Pond Circle. Just to quickly summarize, we've seen this application before. It's an application for an amended site plan and special use permit to expand the Woodland Pond Senior Assisted Living Facility by constructing 3 new single-story duplex cottages, each of which will be approximately 3,000 square feet and contain 4 bedrooms. The properties consist, puts where they are in Putts Corner and the districts. New cottages are proposed in the PB district, where life care or continuing care retirement community is a special use permit in that district. Seeker has it as an unlisted action. There is a referral that is required. And then of course, we're going to have public hearing as well. So what we're going to need to do is make a motion to classify the application as an unlisted action under seeker. And then we're going to need a motion to refer the application to the Ulster County Planning Board. So with that in mind, I'd like to get a motion to classify the application as an unlisted action under seeker.
So motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So it has now been classified as an unlisted action. We also want to get a motion to refer this application to the Ulster County Planning Board.
So motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we will have this going to the Ulster County Planning Board, and we'll wait to hear back from them. So we're going to listen to the applicant's presentation, and then we've got some issues that we need to go through so that we can be clear on the direction. So with that in mind, the applicant, do we have anyone here representing the applicant? I see.
Yes, we have several of us here. I'm Michelle Gramolia, the CEO.
Okay.
I'm Tom Tango, Director of Plant Operations.
And we also
believe
have,
we have-
Bill.
Yeah, this is Bill Sparkman from Wabell Associates, the civil engineer.
Okay. Very good. So lead us through what your vision is. Let's start getting a little more into the detail of the project.
Sure, thank you. So Woodland Pond has been in existence now and open for 12 years. And we're full basically with waiting lists everywhere. And we've been looking for opportunities to expand our mission a bit. Not-for-profit organization. We have an existing pilot, which we're about halfway through. And so, you know, in so doing, we worked with Chazen months ago to identify potential opportunities to build on campus. We have most of our property that is undeveloped is in a conservation easement or federally protected wetlands. So our opportunities for expansion are very limited. Our wait lists are primarily tilted towards our larger freestanding units or our cottages, of which we have the fewest of all of our units. So we have just 12 duplexes with 24 total units on campus that are standalone, but they have the most extensive waiting lists, many, many years. So we had reached out to Chazen, who was our original site engineer, and asked, what, if any, standalone duplex style buildings similar to what we have now, could we kind of plot into the property? And after some preliminary work and then some more extensive work, we identified there are 3 locations, less than an acre in total disruption, that we can plot using the same or very, very similar floor plans to our existing cottages on the existing property without impacting wetlands, without impacting any other site plans as far as we can tell. And Chazen has done their full analysis at this point. At this point, we can plug into sewer and water, existing utilities, and at maximum capacity, it would only add potentially, as I said, 6 units, which doubly occupied would be 12 additional residents. We currently have 350 residents, so it's really a very small amount.
Okay. Anyone else from the applicant that wants to weigh in on the project? No.
No, I think Michelle encapsulated it pretty well.
I think I would just add that although we've only sort of started actively pursuing and engaged the engineer, we've started discussions with an architect, and we're very close to engaging with one. We're planning on leveraging off of the existing as-built and design, and also most importantly, the aesthetic of the existing cottages, so that other than minor modifications within the buildings to have more functional, floor space, we're really, our goal is to make them look like they should have been there right from the beginning.
Okay. So we have a number of issues, and also want to get some feedback from the board members. I know, Rachel, you have some issues that you want to discuss. But these issues that were indicated on the memo that came back from the attorney, there are 6 of them that we probably need to go through. Some of them are kind of technical in nature, and some of them fairly easy to resolve. I'll allow our attorney to go through some of these issues so that we can kind of speed through them and make sure that we get them done correctly. So, Rick, if you would go ahead, starting with the Ulster County parcel viewer.
Sure. And just one thing that you had suggested, Mr. Chairman, we'll do it whenever you deem appropriate, is to also ask that the planning board engineer review and weigh in with a comment memo on this project as well.
Right.
First thing is, according to the Ulster County parcel viewer, the SBL for this property is 86.2-1-12.120, and the owner is Kingston Regional Senior Corp. These items should be corrected and an owner endorsement provided. So it's obviously, it looks like a corporate owner, which then means that the corporation has to authorize this application to go forward as the owner of the project.
Okay, if I could just clarify that. So we will have to follow up with finding out how to update the parcel viewer. We separated from Kingston Regional Senior Living Corp in 2016. So Woodland Pond is a standalone organization. There is no corporate entity. Well, we're a corporate entity, but we are one single standalone organization. So I'm not sure exactly how that process works, but we will have to have that updated.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the owner authorization to see what you put down on the owner authorization. I just know that it was different from what the record owner is. And it's not unusual to have the county records several months behind as far as transactions. I don't know when this transaction occurred, But if you would provide, along with an owner authorization that properly says who the entity owner is, and that entity owner has, by its board, or if it's a sole member or whatever it is, has authorized this project to go forward with the noted representatives, that will be sufficient, together with some kind of deed transfer or something that indicates that it was separated from the record owner to the present owner.
Okay, sure thing. We can definitely take care of that. That was back in 2016, so
I guess
we will
years
take care of
then.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's been quite a while, so it actually surprises me that that came up, but we will easily take care of that.
Okay, fine. The second thing is that your application identifies this use as a healthcare residential. I don't find that in the village code. There is the life care, continuing care retirement community, which is defined. Is that something that was when it was originally approved, was a zoning classification that's been changed? Or were you just using that in sort of the vulgate of generally it's a healthcare residential? Because we're looking for what is the proper characterization under the zoning code? So we can determine the special permit requirements, et cetera.
Right, so this is these actual 6 units will be life care, continuing care units.
Okay.
Bill, I'm not sure. I know that, Chazen was the original, submitted the original site plan. So I'm thinking that this is submitted the way it was originally. But to your point, this certainly will be, it's life care, continuing care for these 6 units, 100%.
Okay, thank you.
So we can make that modification regardless of what was done the first time around.
Okay, and it's important for the planning board to know this. It's defined in section 212-5 of the code. And so that's what will govern this. So I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay, very good.
The bulk table on the cover sheet for the plans includes a proposed height of 4.5 and a footnote indicating this is referring to an existing variance for the main facility. The bulk table should only indicate the height that's proposed for the new cottages and should include both the stories and height dimension calculated in accordance with the zoning code. And one thing that you'll have to provide us is, I assume by you presenting it this way, is you're saying that the variance automatically applies to the new cottages, and which it might. But also I've seen variances that are restricted in that it's, say, as to a height variance, it's only as to the structure that was before them and not any new supplemental structure. So if you could provide that zoning variance and a sort of a short narrative as to how you view that variance cottages, since obviously the variance only applied to the cottage at the time, it does run with the land. So it very much depends upon the wording of that variance as to whether or not it would apply to the new cottages or not.
Sure thing. I'm just taking notes as we go. If I'm
Sure.
looking down, that's why.
Also, to a point for that one though, I don't believe, unless there's a restriction on the cottages, that we would be applying that variance to the cottages since they are only a single story. I think on the bulk table we had indicated that such a variance existed for the central unit, or central facility, just to make sure that we were, including the whole facility in general. But I think, Rick, that you're saying that the bulk table that we present on the plan should only be for the cottage development and shouldn't include the main facility. So we can definitely we can revise that then.
Okay. And if the variance then isn't an issue, then it's not an issue. So I'll leave that up to you, but the bulk table should address what is existing and what is proposed as far as what the code provides and what you're providing. Okay. The cover letter attempts to address the generally applicable special use standards and conditions, but it really is rather conclusory in fashion. The planning board would be looking for a much more specific and detailed way that you are providing it. You've heard this before. We require that a narrative going through and specifically explaining how you meet those standards. All right.
Just for the purposes of my notes, so how we intend to meet those criteria for the special use permit.
Yes.
Okay.
So it puts forth various standards that this board has to take into account in saying yes or no, you've met those standards or you haven't met those standards. And right now, it's rather conclusory. You're saying that you simply met them, basically. Right?
Okay.
you
So
have to-
a more delineated explanation.
Right,
Yes.
right.
You have to
Okay.
convince the board that you've satisfied all of these things. So explain how you're satisfying all these things, so the planning board can use that in analyzing it.
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
this is Michael Zeeler.
Hello, Mike.
Hi, Rick. Should that be done in the context of this is a life care community that we're,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
so that should be the focus. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because that's a special permit. that you-
Attention, please. This is the
Thank
last
you.
call for.
Last call, is that for drinks or is that for something else? The other thing is that there was some question, and Rachel had brought this up previously, and I'm sure she's going to be discussing it. It's a good point. With respect to the wetlands and whether or not there was some statement in the prior approval with respect to buffer areas. The board does not have before it the approved plans that you had previously. So if you could submit to the board the prior approved plans and the resolution so that the board can go ahead and look at that and make sure that you're compliant with that in the context of this new application, which is really an amended application. The board could try to find it itself, but if you have it ready, it would be very helpful to the board for you to submit it.
So specific to the wetlands delineation and the buffer zones.
Correct.
No, it would be the approved plans generally, and also
okay.
the resolution of approval, which would have conditions, I assume, in it. I don't know how they did it back then, but I assume either in meeting minutes or a formal resolution, there would be conditions to it. Also on the plans, there may be notes that reference that, or maybe other things. Since this is an amendment, we have to make sure that you're not violating some other condition of the prior approval.
Site plan, sure. Yep, we've got that.
Okay.
Yep, we can send that over.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I don't know whether Mr. Thurler was part of the board at that time, but he may actually have some copies of that resolution. I was not a member of the board at the time, so. With that in mind, what I'd like to do now is to ask our board members if they have any comments, anything they'd like to discuss. I know, Rachel, the wetlands is an issue that you would like to review. So why don't you lead us off? You're on mute.
No, it was what Rick just mentioned, but I believe it was the resolution of a lawsuit, that these were conditions that had to be followed as a result of the resolution of the lawsuit, the settlement of the lawsuit, and that it was there were buffers that were set on a plan from 2007, and that the agreement was that any further development had to comply with staying out of those buffers from that plan, from the 2007 plan.
And those were the buffers from the town? Or were those buffers that were set by the Corps of Engineers or by the village?
I don't know the answer to that. They're on the site plan. They were set by the planning board. I mean, they were, I believe, in anticipation of a wetlands law, that the law wasn't necessarily passed, but there was an agreement that was reached. I'm sure Michael knows the details of it, but it was an agreement that was reached as a result of a lawsuit, because they had agreed not to encroach on them, and then the final plan did, and then it was resolved. But they had agreed to comply with the wetland buffers that were set on the 2007 plan. I think I have a paper copy of it somewhere. I could probably find it.
Okay, if you can send that along, or if the applicant knows of the final resolution of that, I can read it. Sometimes
so-
lawsuits have a direct impact upon the planning board's powers and what they have, and sometimes it's more between third parties. I don't know until I read this, but whoever has a copy of it, if they can send it to me, it actually should be uploaded. Send it to Autumn and have it uploaded into the electronic files for this application so that the public can look at it as well. And then I'll take a look at it to see what effect it has on it.
Right. So just to be clear, Rachel, for your memory, there was an Article 78 lawsuit filed, which, held the project up for about a year. We ultimately settled it for money and remedial action, which we couldn't proceed until the village planning board determined that we had met the criteria outlined in the settlement. So if we provide the fact that that was signed off on back then, that should be sufficient, right? We shouldn't have to re-arbitrate this.
No,
I think so. I mean,
no, you're right, Rachel. And you are as well, Michelle. We're not going to redo that lawsuit or the issues in there. If in fact it's as you've represented, it's basically going to be just looking at the 2007 plans and seeing what they are. If that's what the settlement said, that you have to comply, and then later the planning board did comply with those plans. So, but if you send that to me, the resolution of that Article 78, I don't need to have all the papers of the Article 78, just a resolution of it, if it was done by a settlement agreement or a discontinuance with prejudice or whatever. And just send me that final one, and I can look at that and then look at the plans that sound like they were subsequent to this, and then I'll be able to advise the board.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zach, anything that you want to ask, or Tom, Dennis?
Well, to that point about wetlands, so item 13 on the short EAF, you did answer yes to any portion of the site of the proposed action or lands adjoining the proposed action contain wetlands or other water bodies. So from looking at the plans, I interpret that to refer to the adjacent lands. Is that right?
No, well, yes and no. So our property, we have 86 acres of which these will be constructed on. The individual sites for these 3 duplexes do not contain wetlands, but they are adjacent to our wetlands. So wetlands on our property.
Okay.
Yeah, John, so I don't have too many comments. I think it looks like a pretty solid plan to me. And yeah, I'm just interested in looking at the 2007 site plan.
Yeah, and I think Rick covered everything with the 6 points, and looks like Michelle is going to supply us with everything we need. It's really a small addition, and I think that everything will be in compliance. But again, Rick pretty much set the stage for us to get all the information we need.
Okay. All right, so part of our homework is going to be to go back and look at that packet to make sure that we're all well aware of what's going on. And Michael Zerler is raising his hand. Either he's saying goodbye or he has a question.
Yeah, I do have a question. You mentioned that you wanted your engineer to look at something. Are you going to discuss that with us?
Yeah. What we'd like to do is to have our engineer review the initial plans. I know that you'd like for us to go ahead and just resolve it without that review, but I know that there are other interested parties that may have some things to say. There may be some other agencies such as the Department of Environmental that may have some issues with it. So we want to have him take a look at the plans to kind of give us his wisdom so that we can be better informed from the next time we meet, so that we can speak on this as intelligently as possible.
So given everything that you've requested, will you send this to Ulster County Planning Board after this meeting, or are you going to want further materials from us before you do that?
I think that the resolution of the board was to send it now. There's enough
Yeah, I'm
information
just looking
now.
up here. We did that.
Yeah, so they're gonna send it now. There's enough information. I don't think that anything that was asked for was a large modification unless we're surprised by something in the 2007 plans. So I think that we need the engineer's comment, as the chairman said, and then we're sending it right off to the Ulster County Planning Board for their comments. They may look at it as early as the beginning of next month.
Yeah, I think they're scheduled in. If we can get it going and we can get all the information out. But yes, we did go ahead and make the motion to have the UCPB look at it.
Okay, so for our part, we will get you everything ASAP. And then hopefully we can get, on their agenda for the beginning of March. That'd be great.
Yeah, Autumn will work with you along with me and with our attorney to try to get this moving as quickly as possible in the right direction.
Chairman, the last thing I had, and it was in my memo to the planning board, but as the applicant may have noticed, although we typed the action as unlisted, we did not assume lead agency. And the reason for that is that it just seemed odd to me. And that's why also it's probably helpful to have the engineer in here rather than me. But it seemed odd that there were no other involved agencies as set forth in the SEAF. And that may well be true, but it's just seemed odd to me that there was no other governmental agencies that had any approvals on this. And therefore, that's why we withheld assuming the lead agency, because we may need a coordinated lead agency. Certainly, if you're going to be asking for a variance, then it needs to be a coordinated notice of intent, because there would be an involved agency. I don't know whether or not somebody mentioned something about a pilot.
We have an existing pilot. And so
right.
I guess when it goes to the Ulster County Planning Board, it would assess whether or not that impacts this, but we don't, our initial understanding is that there's no, well, it would be the Ulster County CRC now, it was the IDA, that because it's an existing property and we're remaining within the existing use and within the existing parameters of what we agreed to the IDA, that they shouldn't have to approve anything. I guess the Ulster County Planning Board would make that determination.
You're not asking for any additional benefits from the CRC?
Not at this time. No.
Okay,
We're not.
Then they would be
Right. This is going to be. This is not going to be
financed.
financed. Right. It won't be financed through the CRC.
No tax breaks or anything else that would be given as a result of this?
Not for this
Or
project. No.
sales tax on your materials or anything? You're not asking for any exemption?
We haven't discussed that. I mean, we already have a sales tax exemption, and this would be under our existing TIN.
Yeah, but you'd be, in order for that to expand to a new area, even on the same site, I believe that you'd have to get an approval from what usually would be the IDA. I guess the CRC handles that now. But that would be an additional benefit considered to be financing, and that would be something that would be considered an involved agency then. And also that you talked about the state affordable housing. I don't know if there's some state approval that you're getting for this. What I want to do is include all of those agencies, send them out in a coordinated review so that there's no chance later on that somebody said, well, you didn't include involved agency and therefore the seeker wasn't proper.
Right. So this is not affordable housing for us. I think that was the last project.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
That's okay. But the question about the IDA is a good one. I know Joe Scott was their attorney. I believe he's retired. We haven't done any transactions with them since 2017. But I will follow up with the CRC and find out what we might need to do on the sales tax exemption. And if we have to modify that aspect of the application, we will do so.
Yeah, I just want to get because it's a 30-day wait period for the involved agencies to get back. I'd like to get that notice of intent out as quickly as possible.
Okay.
So that's the reason we didn't go ahead and file as the lead agency. So once we get this together, then we can once we have all that information together, we can put it out, and that would make it easier for them to respond within the appropriate scheduled time. So anything else that we need to cover with anyone here? No? Okay, so we all have our homework. We have our objectives that we need to accomplish before our next meeting. So with that in mind, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think now Zerler actually was waving goodbye. All right, that leads us to the final action for tonight. It's a site plan amendment for the net zero project. And it's really the applicant is needing a field change to modify one of the conditions of the resolution of approval. One of the conditions was that before they got a certificate of occupancy, they would have plantings that would go in place, trees, bushes, things of that nature. The problem, of course, is that it's midwinter and they can't really plant them, and the weather will not allow it, and it would kill the plants anyway. So what we are doing to ensure that we've got compliance with tree plantings, applicants proposing to post a cash performance bond with the village in the amount of an estimate that he's going to make and it's going to be approved by our village engineer to purchase the trees, have them installed, prevailing wage rate. And the security will ensure that the planting of the trees will occur, or if he fails to do so, that the village can bid out the work to have it done using the cash bond monies to do so. So it will ensure the completion of portions of the public project, and it will get it done, and it won't be wasting some trees and plants by planting them in the dead of winter and killing them. So what David has done is he has given us a proposal, and let's see if I can find it. I don't know if everyone got a chance to look at that or not. Did everyone receive that?
I haven't been able to open anything.
Crickets here.
Yeah, I saw it in Google Drive.
Okay.
I can't open it.
All right. Let me take a look here.
Rachel, 2 seconds. I see your request now. I will add you.
Thank you.
Autumn, do you have a copy of that you can share on the screen?
Well, if she adds me
I'm
up.
sharing it.
Yeah,
I'm sharing it now, John,
Good.
from your Google Drive.
Great. Okay. So this is the and it's very small, so I can't really read it unless I go on the Google Drive.
Here, I can zoom in.
Laptop won't allow me to do that. What it says, there you go. Thank you very much. Just to briefly read through this, requires prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. So this is stating the circumstances are needed. He says, while we already worked out the specific plannings with Ms. Travis, who was the landscape engineer at the time, we cannot complete the actual planning now or before our expected certificate of occupancy in March 9th, 2022. Wow, okay. Because the soil is frosted. Also, the approved site plan, specifically landscape detail sheet, restricts us from planting these trees prior to April 1st. Isn't the last frost like May 15th? Just a thought there. So we thus propose that the planning board grant us a field change to allow us to post an $8,000 bond with the village clerk and defer the planting to occur after April 1st, 2022. And no later than May 31st, 2022. The bond will ensure that if we fail to perform, the village can bid out the work and perform at prevailing wages. And there's an attached memo detailing the estimated costs. Let me go down to that. So there we have from materials down to labor. And this will go to our village engineer, Dennis Larios, who will has signed it and agreed with it. So what we need to do is to have a motion to accept this proposal for a field change.
So motion.
A second, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a discussion before the vote. It should be clear that this is an $8,000 cash bond that we deposited with the village. That
Okay.
way, the money is more fluid and able to be easily accessed by the village in case, which I don't expect, but in case they need to go ahead and access that money to do the plantings if Mr. Shepler does not do them.
Okay. Very good. So again, we'll need a motion to accept this proposal as a field change for.
So motion.
Second on that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So the motion is carried. So David, I think that is the last thing that you need before you can get your certificate of occupancy. Is that correct?
I hope so. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so this brings us back now to the public comment section. Have you, Autumn, seen any sort of public comments that are lingering out there? People that might want to make any comments?
There are a few people in the waiting room. Let me double check on the, I don't
Sure.
see anything on the YouTube page, and I've not received anything in email.
Okay. Okay, so anybody that is in the waiting room still?
Nobody's in the waiting room. No, nobody in the waiting room.
All
It
right.
looks like somebody has their hand up though. Please unmute.
Yes,
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Plantinga.
Try-
On the agenda tonight, but I am a little concerned. I see that Floyd Niffen has an application for a property on the corner of Du Bois and Prospect Street to subdivide that wooded lot and build 4 single-family houses. And I want to know what the status of that is, and I'm trying to gather information. I live on Caroline Way, and my neighbors and I just found out last week when Mr. Niffen's surveyors were out there that there were plans to develop that land. So is there anything that you can tell me?
He has come to us and I think that we've given him the approval on that. Is that correct? But he should have put out notices for public hearings on that. I don't
Received-
know where Caroline Way is in relationship to the properties. And it looks like our attorney has something he wants to weigh in on.
Yeah, we had one meeting on this on January 4th, and that was it. It's a subdivision. It will require a public hearing. It will require seeker be done prior to that public hearing. We just had a brief introduction of the project really on January 4th, and that's the status now. And so there still has to be a good bit left to go before there's an approval.
That's right. He's
Including
had
the public
several-
hearing, that the public hearing will be noticed in the paper. And people will be able to chime in during that public hearing as to their concerns. I would suggest that you access the planning board, the village's website under the planning board, under applications that are pending, either, I'm not sure if it's carried over into 22, but certainly 21. And the application number, in case you want it, is PB 21-21. And you can access all of the documents that have been submitted in that electronic file.
Okay.
I would also suggest that if you'd like to see the actual discussion, I think the meetings are all on YouTube, so you could view the actual meeting.
And I think he only gave us a concept drawing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mr. Niffen has had several projects in front of the board, so
Mr. Niffen built my house on Caroline Way, which is, this is in my front yard, literally, right across my driveway. So
He is going to be submitting new plans,
okay,
more detailed plans. He went through the correct process. You come up with basically a sketch plan, and then you have to come up with a more detailed subdivision plat. He has not submitted that to my knowledge, but when it is, it'll be in that folder that you can access and look at it yourself at your leisure. And as Zach said, you can listen to what happened at the last meeting on January 4th.
very good. That's all useful information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so with that in mind, I guess the next thing that we want to do is to get a motion to adjourn.
No motion.
And a second on that, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have quite a bit of homework to do on just these two applications, and I'm sure there will be a couple more headed towards us. So we'll follow up with you. We'll work with Autumn to get notes out, some follow up for everyone to work on. So thank you all for attending. Look forward to seeing you again.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.